programming process. And then hopefully from there will be enough questions from the registrants that will be able to kind of respond more organically. All right, it sounds like we are live. So thank you everybody for joining us. And thank you to our panel of programmers who are graciously opening themselves up to questions and to talk about process and values and the inner workings of film festivals. So thanks everybody for being here on both sides. Great, so we are recording, and just to start things off, we'll do a round of intros. My name is Clint Bowie. I'm the artistic director at the New Orleans Film Society. I'm zooming in from my home, which is in New Orleans, an area that's referred to as Bulbancha by the native Chitimacha tribe. And this panel came about in recognition of a need for more transparency, generally speaking, within the film landscape. I think filmmakers often have questions about what goes on after I submit my film, or could you tell us about the process? I think there are a lot of assumptions that are made. I think it often feels like a black hole that filmmakers submit into and just hope for the best. And we're trying to put more of a face on that and kind of answer questions about what the programming process really looks like, who's on the other side of that table watching submissions and making decisions, and really wanted to give a voice to that process. So we invited this great group of 5 programmers from different festivals all across the southern region to join us in this conversation. So I'd like to go around and have everyone say a few words about who they are, what entity they work for, and yeah, anything else you'd like to share. Deidre, would you like to start?
Sure, get it over with. Why not? I'm Deidre McDonald, and I'm the artistic director for the BronzeLens Film Festival, and it's based here in Atlanta. We had our first festival in 2011, and we've been going ever since. And of course, now we're virtual these past 2 years, last year and this upcoming year. And there's a lot that I can tell you about it. How we originated was through the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau initially. And our founder was actually a vice president there, Kathleen Bertrand. And the question was, can Atlanta accommodate another festival? You're going to be hearing from a representative of a very great festival, very old festival here in Atlanta. And so is there room for a festival that focuses on people of color? And so we found that there was, and we've been going ever since.
Thank you, Deidre.
That's a short answer.
Casey, you go next.
Yeah, thanks, Clint, and thank you to the New Orleans Film Society for hosting this event and asking Austin Film Festival to participate. I'm the Director of Programming and Industry Relations for AFF. I've been working with the festival now for about 6 years. I've worked in a few different programming positions there, but it's certainly always fun to see a lot of the new films coming into the competition and get a sense of what creatives have at the top of their minds year over year. That's always very exciting, and one of the reasons why I've really stuck with programming for this long. Our 28th festival is going to be taking place this October. The dates are the 21st through the 28th of October. And we're really excited to be back in person this year. That is the current plan. The festival will be taking place in person. We will also have a smaller component that's digital, pardon me. So anyone who is uncomfortable or doesn't have the means right now, certainly to make that trip, more than invited to join us in that capacity. We'll have a lot of really fun and exciting programming to announce as we get closer there. But for our competitions, our film competitions are actually still open. We have a couple more deadlines left, and our final deadline will be July 9th. But I'm sure we'll talk to some extent about all that stuff soon here. But thanks again for the invite, guys.
Great. Thank you, Casey. Zandashé, let you go.
Sure. My name is Zandashé Brown. I am the Artist Engagement and Programming Manager for New Orleans Film Society and sort of a newbie programmer. This is my third year with New Orleans Film Festival as a programmer. I work in our narrative feature and narrative shorts categories, as well as our Southern film categories. Um, I'm also a writer and director and was previously supported by the New Orleans Film Society. So it's great to sort of come full circle and work for this group of folks that is looking for more, Southern-based filmmakers, but also just interesting stories from all over the country and all over the globe.
Thank you. Lauren.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Ponto. I'm the head of programming at the Nashville Film Festival, based here in Nashville, Tennessee. So excited to be talking to everyone. We are definitely in our entries crunch time. Our entries are still open, but they do close on June 25th, so this month. We will be a hybrid festival this year. Our dates are September 30th through October 6th. And we'll be turning 52. So we're pretty old and we're proud of it. And yes, like I said, so we're going to be hybrid. So we're going to have majority of the films panels this year online, and then we're going to be making some exciting announcements about being at several venues around Nashville pretty soon. So this month, with programming, this is my third festival here in Nashville. So last year we were virtual, and then 2019 was my first year here. I was at the Chicago International Film Festival for 5 years before this as their education director. So I'm excited to be talking to everyone and get into what types of categories we have and what we look in for programming. So thanks.
Thank you. And Alyssa, why don't you talk a bit about yourself and your role?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Alyssa Armand. I am the programming director of the Atlanta Film Festival. We just wrapped our 45th edition about a month ago, and we actually did our 44th edition just a few months before that in September because we postponed due to the pandemic. So we've been very busy the past few months. Needless to say, we have open submissions already for 2022. We both have our film festival, of course, but also a screenplay competition. So that is running and open now. And we are kind of in this period of like rest after wrapping our past festival, but we are about to head back to the office next week and just go full steam ahead to planning 2022. I think this will be my 8th festival on staff in any capacity. I started as a shorts programmer and kind of worked my way up from there, was a volunteer before that. So kind of a long journey to this point, but we are kind of a broad general interest festival. We do features, short films, all types of genres, categories, and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity. It's always great to get to speak directly to the filmmakers and kind of break down those barriers a little bit. And I look forward to it.
Thank you, Alyssa.
If I can jump back in too and just share our upcoming festival dates. This is going to be the 32nd New Orleans Film Festival. It's happening November 5th through the 21st, and it's going to be something of a hybrid situation where we will have in-person screenings that we're really excited for, but we'll also still have our films available on demand online in the way that we did last year. So I think like many other festivals, we are trying to inch back into gathering in the safest ways that we know possible. And our next deadline is also coming up too, our extended deadline on June 18th. So make sure to get submissions in there, and we'd really love to consider your work.
I should also mention that if you RSVP'd for this panel, all the filmmakers out there will be sending you an email at the end of it with some special discounts to some of the select festivals. So be sure if you haven't RSVP'd and you just found the link on YouTube that you go ahead and formally register so you do get that email with those discounts. So all 5 of the festivals that y'all represent are happen to be Oscar qualifying. And just to kind of explain what that means, Alyssa, why don't you, I didn't prepare you for this, but do you mind kind of talking folks through kind of what it means to be an Oscar qualifying festival? I think there are a lot of questions from filmmakers I know about that status.
Yeah. So Atlanta is Oscar qualifying in all 3 shorts categories: narrative short, documentary short, and animated short. Basically, the film that wins our top prize in each of those 3 categories automatically qualifies for consideration for the following year's Oscars. So it's a bit of a process from there. We actually don't formally program films in or out of competition. We make those decisions after the program is complete, but that's kind of the steps to go from there. And so that's not the only way to qualify for the Academy Awards as a short film, but there are a substantial number of festivals, all 5 of us included, that do have that opportunity. And we certainly see that affects, I would say, the interest and filmmakers' interest in submitting to our festival. I think it's a good get for festivals to have, because it is just another thing that they can offer to the filmmakers that submit. And yeah, it's just another point of value. I'm rambling a bit now, but yeah, that's the process.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing. And I don't know if everyone wants to go through really quick and talk about the categories that their festival is Oscar qualifying in. Briefly, Deidre, which awards, or how does a film qualify in a festival?
We're qualified in the narrative shorts, and that's been since 2011. And initially, I had international shorts separate from the narrative shorts. And the person who won in international was so excited because he thought that he would be able to be qualified. And when I asked for clarification, they said no. So everything is together, international as well as everything in the shorts category is together for us.
Lauren, what's Nashville's award policy?
Yeah, so we are Oscar qualifying in our narrative shorts, our animated, and our documentary. I think, Alyssa, you mentioned that Atlanta is the same. And like Deidre just said, for our categories in those 3, we look at all different types. It doesn't have to be us. It's international. We just want to, include as much work as possible. And yeah, they're really great categories. My colleague Robert Torres programs those categories. So yeah.
Great. Zandashé, do you want to talk about New Orleans?
Yeah, we also qualify in all 3 categories: narrative, animated, and documentary shorts. So not much to add there, but we get a lot of really incredible submissions from each of those categories. And we root for each of them each year at the Oscars. Hope to see them represented there.
And Casey?
Yeah, for us, our narrative short, animated short, and documentary short competition categories, the jury award winners are eligible to be shortlisted. We actually most recently had our 2018 selection. Sister by Sichi Song was nominated for the Academy Award recently. And in 2017, actually, we had a win from one of our alumnus, Frank Stifel, with Heaven is a Traffic Jam on the 405, won the doc short Academy Award that year. So, yeah.
Great. Thanks for talking through that. The next question I want everybody to address is kind of in an effort to help filmmakers discern the festival that might be the best fit for their film. I think, you go on Film Freeway, there are literally hundreds or thousands of festivals, and it can be daunting for folks to look at that long list and try to figure out, like, which one should I apply to? And some things like Oscar qualifying status, that helps, but to try to help differentiate some of the festivals, I'd love for each of you to talk about what the personality of your festival's programming is. What are the kinds of films you're looking for? What is what do you think really represents the general type of programming that your festival selects? It's a big question. Feel free to take it in whichever direction you'd like. But who wants to start?
Me.
Go for it.
We were founded on the premise that the voices of people of color were not being heard in the film industry. So that is our major focus. And that includes people from the African diaspora, as well as Asians, indigenous people, you name it, and from all over the globe. We have received submissions from over 50 different countries this year, well over 50, and our film festival reflects that. And it's just so amazing getting a film from Afro-German filmmakers this year in the shorts category. It's like, whoa, this is serious. And we've gotten about the Maori, a feature short from the Maoris in Australia. So it's just been a world coming together for BronzeLens and hearing unheard voices and seeing stories that we haven't seen before and going places we haven't been before. And the people that follow us and come to our festivals, they love it. So that is our focus. And it's films by and about people of color.
Thank you. Casey, do you want to go next? I ask, I think Austin is known as being a writers' festival, and I wonder how much of that you feel like feeds into the programming selections that y'all make.
It's really like the foundation of any conversation with regards to programming, and that's with regards to the film festival side of things or our writers' conference, Clint, which you alluded to. So if we're having a discussion about short films, features, digital series, which is also another competition category we service, it all goes back to narrative. And for us, it's really the sort of traditional sense of storytelling, right? Looking for a beginning, middle, and end with some shift or change potentially in the protagonists of the film. And really from there, we can get into the weeds of the films that rise to the top, usually feature more unique characters or unique purview of a situation, perhaps that our audience may not have been privy to before. Certainly dynamic narrative structures and arcs are always really exciting for us to help feature. But it also goes beyond the screening or exhibition of the film as well. For us, it really comes down to trying to support the talent behind that. Actually, Zandashé was one of the filmmakers I had the luck and pleasure of working with in 2018 with her film Blood Runs Down. So for us, it's about bringing in filmmakers who also have the potential to maybe be on a panelist, part of our indie film track that takes place at the Writers' Conference, where we provide filmmakers an opportunity to speak to their process, speak to their journey, et cetera, et cetera. Also looking at further opportunities we may be able to provide them, whether it be through a fellowship. We just announced our first fellowship through the film side of things last year, the Enderby Entertainment Fellowship Award, which also returned this year with our fantastic partners over there. So that's another opportunity that's facilitated through our shorts competitions, where the winner of that Enderby fellowship has the chance to go out to LA to work with executives at Enderby, to have some experience perhaps on a bigger production set and see what it takes to really bring some of these amazing projects that we fall in love with in the cinema to life. So that's really what it's about, and it comes back to for us at the end of the day.
Thank you, Casey. Alyssa, do you want to talk a bit about the programming personality at Atlanta?
Yeah. How to pinpoint it? We have a big, varied personality. I mentioned earlier we have a lot of categories, but we play all sorts of films in terms of genre and style, from experimental works to puppetry films to food theme films. It's just kind of whatever we receive. Something worth noting, we're largely a submissions-based festival, so I don't really go into this process looking for anything in particular. We very much let the submissions shape what the next year's festival will be. And we kind of see our role as programmers is to kind of find those kind of threads and trends and themes that emerge from one year to the next. I guess for the purposes of this panel too, I can focus in a little bit on our shorts programming. We largely program our blocks thematically. So we are often thinking of how films can speak together based on how they play with each other. We kind of see it as almost like mixtapes that kind of tell a bigger story, but we also have recurring, more genre category based blocks, like a comedy block every year, a midnight kind of weird, what the fuck type block, and things like that. But we really do let the films kind of, you know, tell us what the festival will look like each year. And we like to kind of, I don't know, think about how an audience can see a selection of 6 films where they may have seen a film in that block somewhere else, but seeing it in a new way and how they can kind of speak together. So yeah, I think that's kind of like something that we've grown, especially over the past few years. And I think our audience in Atlanta really does respond to our shorts programming and likes that kind of variety and dynamic nature of a block that really can provide.
Thank you. Lauren, how about Nashville? What's your the personality of your programming?
Yeah, so like Atlanta, we showcase a wide variety of different programming. I mean, our categories are in features and shorts. We have series, we have VR, and you know, in our feature categories, we have a music documentary competition, we have new directors, narrative, documentary. And then for our shorts, we have narrative, doc, animated, a new one that we're introducing this year called the Edge Shorts program. It's kind of like a riff on experimental, except kind of focusing on more narrative-based kind of on the edge explosive pieces. And then we also have Graveyard Shift, which is our horror. We both have feature and shorts in that. So it's really all over the board. And I guess for me, I program the music doc, feature doc, narrative features, and some of the student work. So for me, and I think I can speak for some of my programmers, when I say that, you know, out of all these variety of films, something that we want all of the films to have in common is just like a sense of discovery. You know, we all want to be watching a film that we feel is fresh and new, which I realize is hard sometimes, both for programmers and filmmakers. And, you know, something I think is really amazing when I see is, you know, the circumstances of a narrative, it doesn't have to be this like epic, grand narrative, but rather, you know, stories that find the extraordinary in the ordinary. For example, I recently watched a film that was at this year's Sundance Film Festival called El Planeta by Amalia Allman. And if you've ever seen it, I mean, the concept is so simple, yet the filmmaker just found a really fresh way to aesthetically convey the narrative. And she found a lot of natural humor and, you know, relatable emotions in these everyday situations. So I think, you know, both for features and shorts, I think we can say that's something we all have in common. You know, and for documentaries, I think it's just about staying true to the filmmakers and the subjects and having a clear point and perspective. You know, I think we all can see documentaries sometimes in our submissions or wherever that kind of feel meandering and you don't feel that the story was left in a place that left you satisfied. And so for me, I think it's, you know, just making sure, you know, a piece has that compelling cinematic element, but also just having a very clear point and focus. That's just a little bit about what we look for in our programming.
Thank you. Couldn't agree more on the small stories piece. I feel like small stories are way too often, or way almost always the best stories. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
We don't always need to save the world. That's
totally
how I feel about it.
Such great advice. Such great advice. Zandashé, talk a little bit about New Orleans's programming personality.
Yeah, I mean, you know, each of our programmers has different tastes and preferences, so I won't try to speak for all of them, but I think as a festival, we're really drawn to storytellers who have something urgent to say and who do a really good job of saying it. And so like other people were saying, that's in any genre, it's documentary, narrative, experimental, or in between, but it always comes back to intentional storytelling that reveals itself, whether it's through the script or the character or the cinematography. We like to see strong or interesting, but again, this word intentional choices being made. And the more unique and personal that story feels, the more that it seems to be urgently coming from the maker, I think that we're that much more inclined to show it. And that, like the films that we end up showing are ones that impact us on an emotional level, sometimes in ways that we haven't been impacted before by a film, but we want to share that experience with the audiences as well. So a recent example is last year's narrative shorts jury winner In Sudden Darkness by Taylor Montague, which did extremely well on the festival circuit, about a family in New York navigating a blackout. And it doesn't really abide by the ways that we understand narrative structure. And yet it's so rich in feeling and tenderness. And it feels like you're being implanted into someone else's memory. So I give that example to say it's not about how well you can imitate something else that you've seen on screen before, or how big of a budget you have, or how many resources, how sleek your cinematography and your editing are. It's looking for films that feel urgent and personal, where you can feel through the screen that this person had to get the story out of them. They had to explore this theme or relationship or this moment. And they did that in the form of a film. And maybe it's a comedy, maybe it's a drama or a documentary, but you can feel the person behind the filmmaking.
Beautifully said, Zandashé. I something that I get to work with you, and I'm in conversation with you a lot. And something that I think of often that you told me sometime last year was when we were talking about a film, you said, is this person trying to make a movie, or are they trying to tell a story? And that's something that, when you think a bit about that distinction, it can really inform your approach to the process.
Yeah, I return to that a lot.
We have some questions coming up in the chat, and I definitely want to get to as many of those as we can. But before we do, I have one more question that I'd like for everybody to address, and it's a bit of an extension of the last question, and it is related to the values that you as individuals and as an organization hold, and how you fold those values into your programming, and what that looks like when you go about creating a slate of films that is representative of the kinds of films you want to support and filmmakers you want to support. I don't know who wants to tackle this first, but I'm going to open the floor to whoever wants to go.
I think that what attracts me to a particular film is whether it makes you feel or to think, have some kind of reaction to it. Does it tell you a story you've never seen? Do you learn something you've never thought of? There are just so many things that are unfolding in these great stories that we receive. And so it just is so important if the whole package is excellent, from the cinematography, the writing, the acting, and there's nothing that's flawed in it, is what I really, really attracts me. And the storytelling is so important. So that's something that is a criteria for me, is whether it makes you feel. And it could be laughing or crying or sad, whatever, but feeling comes across.
Thank you, Deidre. Anyone else want to jump in and talk about kind of what a values-based programming process might look like, or looks like for them?
I can. I think, outside of basing it around the films that find us, and having great respect for that process. We take it very seriously that filmmakers trust us to view their work and to judge it, even though like I feel cringy even describing myself as a judge of work, because so much about this process is just so subjective. And I think it's really important that programmers are able to kind of look outside of themselves. We're so often programming outside of maybe, my own personal taste, but still being able to recognize that something is doing something new or feels authentic and has something to offer to our audiences. Part of, the benefit of doing this job for many years is I've obviously seen a lot of films, and probably more films than is reasonable for humans to consume. I think we can all relate to that. And when you find something that's new and fresh, it jumps out, to me the same way as like the very first great short film that I ever saw, like ages ago when I was an intern, and that moment still hits the same way because it's just the discovery of that. And you never really know when that's going to find you. But as soon as you find it, there's that moment and opportunity to realize, we have the ability to take something like that and create space for that filmmaker's work and be kind of like a vessel to get that to new audiences. And I think that's just like the core of what we do as festivals, is just really creating a space for that work to thrive.
Thanks, Alyssa. Who else wants to speak to this?
I can jump in. I'll say, last year, Clint, you and I and the rest of our team, we sat down to sketch out our programmatic practices, and we listed these on Film Freeway and on our website. But it was an effort to just be more transparent with filmmakers about what we look for and how we prioritize things. And they give insight into the type of work we seek out and the types of artists that we try to center. For example, we want to make sure that we're sharing our platform with the most talented filmmakers who have faced barriers in their field. So filmmakers of color, women and non-binary filmmakers, queer and trans filmmakers, poor and disabled filmmakers, and then of course, Southern filmmakers who have faced geographical boundaries. And lots of extraction there as well. We want to see these people telling their stories rather than someone else telling their stories, even if that someone else can make it look fancier. So we try to be really intentional about creating space for those people because we want to see more of them thriving in this field. And if our festival is able to help facilitate that, then we want to. So for us, and then this is mentioned in our programming practices, this sometimes looks like disregarding all the things that we've collectively learned about what a good film looks like and stripping away our understandings of artistic merit and taste, right? So maybe the editing on this particular piece is choppy, or maybe it doesn't have that like shiny cinematography, but there's a rich story there. There's a strong character or theme, or there's like a personal specificity to it. Then we're excited by it. We can put our reservations aside there because aside from promoting the work, we also want to invest in the artists. And we hope that down the line, there will be opportunities for you to make the sleek film later in your career. But what's helping you get to that point? Hopefully we are, so in that way, we're excited by new work. And we want to invest in people that we believe in and share space and share platform with them and celebrate them. So I encourage filmmakers and programmers and other folks to check out some of the work we did with those programming practices. And I'm really proud of it. I'm really excited by it. And, as a filmmaker as well, I just feel really moved and validated and seen by that work.
Thanks, Zandashé. Lauren?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I echo what everyone has said thus far, and feeling and seeing something new. And I do want to also mention what Alyssa said about thank you to filmmakers for submitting and trusting us with viewing your work. I mean, it's such a a big deal to make a film, whether that's a short or a feature. I mean, it is a huge labor, and we recognize it as programmers. I just want to make that very clear. It is, you know, I feel privileged to watch your work in our submissions pool. And I do want to say that, you know, if your film is not right for, you know, Nashville or a festival, that doesn't mean it's not right for a different festival. And I think, you know, I would like just everyone to know that, and nothing is personal when it comes to entries. But, you know, I think for Nashville, we are a music city. I think, you know, a huge part of our programming, and you know, we have a music supervisors program every year that, you know, it gives aid to musicians in and around the city and around the country. We invite people to come out for that and participate in workshops. And so I think, you know, we like to champion musicians, whether that's music for film or musicians, filmmakers, screenwriters. We do have a screenwriting competition. And so, you know, we want to make sure we're getting a variety of voices and showcasing them in our platform. But just like all of our, you know, everyone else has said, I think, you know, feeling and discovery and, you know, amplifying voices that, you know, have something to say and might not otherwise be heard. That is our programming mission.
Thanks. Casey, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think there's much more I can add that everyone else hasn't already tossed out there. It's so many great values overall. I mean, for us, certainly everything, as I alluded to, comes back to that idea of storytelling and trying to find filmmakers and writers, especially those who wear both hats in a lot of cases, especially through our film competitions, who have that capacity to also potentially take a next step in the industry. We're looking for folks who, of course, as we go through the initial stage process of screening or judging, each film is watched at least twice for all our films. In a lot of cases, watch 3 times, because we're trying to make sure, as Alyssa alluded to, that we're aware and mindful of those biases and the subjective nature of this. I'm sure we could all tell you a number of different stories about the conversations and the deliberations to program films, and really how expansive those conversations can get. We consider a lot of different things at the end of the day. We consider what opportunity selection may provide X film and filmmaker or project versus Y, right? It's one thing to provide, yes, amazing content, another selection, another laurel to put on their poster. That's fantastic. I mean, any support you can do that way is great. But it's also really cool when you can find a voice that maybe, as Zandashé alluded to, is a little rougher. Maybe the overall project's a little rougher, but there's something there. There's something that you can't necessarily let go of, and you know pretty soon as you see it. There's one specific reference for me that I remember in 2018, I believe it was. There's a short film called Lost and Found by Bradley Slade. Really, really adorable animated short film. It got on the initial short list for the Oscars that following year. But that project, I remember watching for the first time in a small group of like 15 to 20 people. And you could just tell all the beats were there. All of those character moments hit so incredibly well. And it's, people talk about that magic of like movies, of magic of the movies or magic of cinema. And yes, definitely, by the way, as soon as anyone can, please go support your local cinema houses and theaters.
Yes.
But that experience, it can be that just overall love and passion for storytelling. You can find that in a number of different places and in a number of different communities across the festival circuit. And really, that's what we try to provide. We try to be that home and that voice for those storytellers. So.
Thank you, Casey. I want to get to some of the questions that are coming up in the chat on YouTube. And the first one, well, there are a couple questions that are generally about the kinds of films that are being programmed. And one asks, what percentage of your films are programmed via submissions? And this is from Tamika Winborn. Does anyone want to take that? I know some festivals track that percentage. And just as a clarification, I think from what I'm understanding from the question is, a lineup may have 100 films, 90 of them may have come directly from submissions, and 10 may have been sought out through either distributors or direct outreach and more of a curatorial approach. So of all you, I don't know if you want to talk about the percent of films that are from submissions versus more curated films.
I don't know the exact number for BronzeLens, but I would say it's about 90% of our films come from submissions. About 90.
Alyssa, do you know Atlanta's number?
Yeah, I know when I started, we were saying anywhere between 80 to 85, but I think we've actually nudged those numbers up the past few years, and we're closer to the 90, 95% range, depending on how many films we have that year. And really the only things that we're programming outside of submissions are kind of those bigger like marquee or centerpiece or spotlight titles that kind of varies from festival to festival, but those are, like you mentioned, some of the distributor titles that we kind of use as a way to maybe get new audiences in hopes that they'll kind of stick around and check out the rest of the programming. We don't really curate shorts very often. The only exceptions we make is maybe we have like a block that just is a little short on runtime and we need that missing piece, and so we'll may like seek that out elsewhere, but largely we let the submissions shape, especially the shorts programming that we do, because we are certainly spoiled for choice in that regard.
Lauren?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but I'd say 80-ish% of our program comes from submissions, especially within the shorts categories. We just continue to see a ton of amazing stuff each year, and so we don't need to look any further. So that I would say like 80% are from the submissions. Like Atlanta, that the things that we are seeking elsewhere are the distributor titles for opening, closing, maybe a surprise film or a spotlight piece that we'll reach out to sales agents or distributors for, and pepper those in some of our feature categories. But yeah, 80%, I would say.
Zandashé?
Yeah, I was going to say, similar to what everyone else has been saying, we're about 95% pulling from submissions for the films that we show. I think Lauren said it best. We don't have to dig much further than that. There's just so much great work out there.
Yeah.
And then we do also a lot of outreach to partner organizations and to our festival alums, people who have screened with us previously, to film collectives that we just really want to hear from and try to be really offering of discounts, whatever assistance they need. But all of that still goes through our submissions process. And then same for what everyone else mentioned. We don't really curate in the shorts categories. We have such a big pool to choose from submissions there alone.
Casey, what about Austin?
Yeah, for us, we've hovered anywhere between 82% to like 90% of all programming coming straight from the competitions. Certainly echo everything everyone mentioned with the shorts programs, absolutely. They're also year over year our largest pool of entries, so it always makes actually for the tougher competitions. But it's always exciting to see at the end of the day which of those filmmakers rise, of course. Yeah, and then as Lauren and Alyssa alluded to, we work with distributors to bring different pieces of programming that way, whether it be some of their bigger titles that may line up for releases in the fall or the early following winter, as well as TV programming and further retrospective programming, which we've historically tied to awardees that come in through our writers conference. So that's sort of where the mix comes in.
What about premiere status? That has come up a couple times. How important is premiere status for your film? Does it matter if the film has played at other festivals? Does the fact that it is not a premiere and has played at other festivals help a film's chance? Anyone want to tackle those those kinds of questions about premiere status related to your festival?
Yeah, for us, it certainly is important. At the bare minimum for consideration for programming on the feature side of things, we require a Texas premiere, and then at the very least an Austin premiere on the short side of things, to try to give as much possibility or chance, obviously, to for programming purposes there. But yeah, we certainly do have to prioritize to a certain extent finding those gems that may not have had an opportunity already. It's also how we all, frankly, to some extent, differentiate ourselves and try to bring something unique to the industry time and time again. So there's certainly, as Zandashé alluded to, we work with a lot of different alumni and partners to help provide opportunities to get those pieces up for consideration as well. But that's usually where things fall with us.
We also work with a lot of people who have formerly been in the festival. And so that's really good that they like us enough that they want to continue to have this relationship. We do prefer at least a Georgia premiere, but it's so hard for these big things, of course, for the other festivals that, Sundance or someplace like that, people don't want to obviously cut their chances. So we like to have as much premiere work to be able to show. And there's some great films that we have to choose from. I do want to say too, we have a student category for shorts. And of course, they're not eligible for the Academy Award qualification aspect, but we get outstanding student shorts. And so it just makes you feel so good that there's a pipeline of outstanding young filmmakers that are coming along too.
Yeah, we don't put a lot of weight into premiere status, or we don't have a requirement for it. We want the films to, experience the audiences that they deserve. I think that maybe, if anything, it could come into mind when we're having a question about, if we're sort of iffy and is like, is this a film that needs our continued platform, or does it already have its wings? And sometimes, even if it has its wings, if we just love the story so much, we'll show it anyway. But yeah, we don't place as much into premiere requirements, I would say, on our end.
Interesting you say that, Zandashé. There was another question in the chat about short films that already have secured online distribution, or have, I think the question specifically is about New York Times OpDocs. Like, if a film has been on OpDocs, is it ineligible for festivals? But I don't know if anyone, also just with the changing nature of online festivals and online access that, can be, across the board or geo-blocked to specific cities and whatnot, it does bring up a lot of questions about what premiere status even means anymore when things aren't necessarily in person.
And that's something that we've also been pretty lenient to with. I mean, we've showcased films at our festival that have been online, or, Vimeo Short of the Week or things like that. I think it's about increasing audience and engaging with those filmmakers more so than it is like the discovery part.
Lauren, I think you had something to say a second ago, and I may have interrupted you, but go for it.
That's okay. I mean, you brought up a good point about like this changing idea of premiere status and online and all of that. I think, I for our films, we would like to at least have a Tennessee premiere, but we've certainly done films in the past that are a Nashville premiere. It's if the film is good and we feel that it speaks to our audience, we're not gonna, knock it out because it's played, in another city in another city in Tennessee. But if a film is played online prior to our festival, if it played online as a part of another festival, that's certainly fine. We just ask that the film isn't available publicly, so someone just can't go look it up on YouTube or Vimeo and watch it at the same time the festival is happening. Obviously, we have kind of like a requirement that it wasn't, created before a certain date. We want to make sure that, it's of the current time. But, for us, we focus on the content the most, and then kind of looking at the premiere status second. That's what we do for Nashville.
We don't screen anything that's been previously televised or widely disseminated. And that's that. Very rarely, there might be something the Atlanta Film Festival has screened, but we love it so much that we would screen it again, but that doesn't really happen a lot.
Are these different qualifiers listed in your film freeway pages and any kind of FAQs about? Great.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great resource for folks who have that specific question about premiere status and eligibility. A question from a really interesting question.
Oh, I just want to jump on one.
Oh, go for it, Casey. Sorry.
No. As we were just on the topic and YouTube came up, I will say to filmmakers just really quickly, be really thoughtful about your plans for your film after you've produced it. A lot of filmmakers don't necessarily think about that sort of further plan until really they're in it. But yeah, I'd really say consider that you don't necessarily need to go directly to YouTube with your project. If it is something where that is the plan that you'd like to take on, absolutely more power to you. That's amazing. But I have found that filmmakers year over year always come forward with that as an issue, that their YouTube their film is publicly available on YouTube, and now they're in a tight spot. So just be mindful of that.
Thanks for mentioning that. There are two questions that are related to length of films, specifically short films. The first is if there is an ideal length for a short film to get accepted. Is a film ever too long? Is a film ever too short? So let's start there. Anyone have any thoughts on that question?
I love that question. I mean, I think your story is as long as it needs to be. Personally, I love to see anything between 7 and 15 minutes because I think that is the amount of time that most filmmakers are able to reasonably and concisely tell a story. It's beyond that, once you start getting into the territory of 20 and 30 minutes, there are certainly stories that warrant that, and stories that keep you engaged or keep you in this sort of like meditative state or whatever they're setting out to do. They do it well within that time frame, but you're not as likely to come across them, I find. So I think that, in school and just getting feedback from other people, the most consistent advice you'll get is to find the places where you can tighten your script, tighten your story, tighten your edit, and move into the next scene as soon as it's time to, which, that's for you to figure out as the filmmaker. But also keep in mind that, that programmers are watching a lot of films a day. And so like, this is your moment, and you don't want to waste any of the time in your storytelling process, but also think about what it means to block together a group of shorts. Your 30-minute short film is going to have to be really good to warrant that spot over maybe the 2 15-minute short films that were also interesting, or other placement. It's harder to program. So I say that not to say that your film has to be a certain time frame, but I think for most of us, there are so many opportunities for us to refine our storytelling process and refine the ways that we communicate theme and character in that 7 to 7 to 15, 7 to 17, 18 is kind of like a sweet spot, I find.
I agree. One year there were so many really short films that were like 5 minutes and under, and it popped out at me. Let's have a whole group of shorty shorts is what I call them. And they were great stories. They were tight. They got their point across. They were entertaining, the whole 9 yards. So that was really nice to be able to group them together. But, we are looking at so many things. You don't want people to think, okay, that could have been cut. That could have been cut, because we can edit in our heads and just see how things could be tighter. So I think that sometimes filmmakers are very close to the work that they do. This has been your baby for so long. And so it's hard to kind of let go. But just be aware that quite often things could be so much tighter. And as she said, you could program more if things are shorter, somewhat shorter. But I think according to the Academy Awards, is it 39 minutes or 40 minutes is the top that they would accept.
Another question about length is interesting question here. With a short film, when you watch it, how long does it take you to determine if that film will be passed on or not?
Well, I can jump in and just speak for our process. We actually require to watch through the entire short film. And so we have to just go through the process of watching through it. But I think this is probably just a programmer to programmer sensibility and how long you've been doing it. But you can get a sense pretty quickly within the first few minutes if there's something there. By no means is that going to be your decision, but you have a pretty good sense. And, there's certainly the opportunity for a film and a filmmaker to do a lot of work that shifts your opinion. That's why I mentioned that doesn't necessarily mean it's the final decision, but you have a sense.
Along those same lines, about opportunities to shift, to shift that opinion. How much does a cover letter, a trailer, or the origin of the filmmaker or film itself come into play? Some of those other aspects of the film that's not just what's playing in front of you. How does that impact your decisions? Lauren, sounds like you're ready to take this.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I so appreciate those cover letters, director statements, trailers are awesome. Film stills. I really appreciate when I see that on Film Freeway. So I think the more you can include in that regard, the better. I also do appreciate when they let us know what other festivals it's played at. I always look at, previously screened or the screenings tab, just to get a sense for where it's been and if it's won any awards. I mean, it certainly doesn't, sway my programming decision. We have our screeners watch it, and then it moves up to programming if it's rated high enough. But I do appreciate knowing all of that sort of, extra information.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're processing so much content and we're going through so much that it helps to have just some sense of what we're about to see. I will say I try, and we encourage this of our screening committee, I try to save a lot of that information until after I've at least started the film, if not watched the whole thing, because our audience at the festival obviously will not necessarily have access to a director's statement or a cover letter, or even they might not even read the log line that we provide. And so if I am being promised things in that supplementary material that doesn't actually come through in the film itself, I have to take that into account, that might not get through to our audience at the festival in the future. Something else on cover letters, I do appreciate when it's somewhat customized to us and our festival. I like knowing that the filmmaker has kind of looked into it, because obviously you do have a lot of festivals to choose from. And if you see something in programming we've done in the past, or even just something about the city of Atlanta that speaks to you and that you think your film would have, relevance for, that could help kind of shift our perspective of, why it could be elevated here, even if it's something that we might not have put together right away. And kind of in that same regard, I think it's tremendously important for programmers to kind of keep in mind who is telling these stories, especially when it comes to documentary. I think we're always thinking about that. And I think if you come into a place where we're watching something and we have questions about that, of the intention, and that's kind of left unsaid, that might kind of shape how we see that. And if we don't have the opportunity to reach out to that filmmaker and ask or clarify, then we may have to kind of lean away from that if we're, if we have concerns there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I read every submission, every cover letter, artist statement, bio that comes through with the films that are submitted, because I just love when artists can help us contextualize their work. I want to understand where you're coming from, why you made this film. And, I'll have my own interpretations of it before reading that as well. I'll have my own thoughts about what you're trying to communicate, or what, or why you made a film like this. But it's really nice to be able to hear it from that filmmaker as well. And sometimes it sways the decision making. Sometimes a filmmaker will write in their cover letter something that I didn't catch in their film, and I'm like, of course. And it makes me love the film that much more, that maybe another person would catch. And because of that, actually, because some of our decision making, we had questions after creating our programming values about the artists that we're supporting. And so we added in 2 mandatory questions in our submissions process. One that asks what the filmmaker's relationship is to the communities or the place or the subject matter that's at the center of their story. And that's trying to counter extractive storytelling. We want to make sure that we're giving priority to folks that are telling stories from within their communities. And the other is how they have approached their filmmaking with equity in mind. Who are you working with? Who are your collaborators? Because that's something that we really, really value. And this is the first year that we've introduced these questions, and we've gotten such a wide range of response. And some of them have been like, that we made this film in the pandemic, so this is me and my partner and that's it, and we understand those. And others have been like, I haven't. And now I'm gonna think of more ways that I can. And that's really special too. But because we're trying to make an investment in both the film and the filmmaker, it's nice to know a little bit about where that person is coming from in their process and where they're headed. So definitely love having the context about you and what you're interested in and what your philosophy on filmmaking is, and how that falls into the story that has wound up in our Film Freeway batch.
Thanks for that, Zandashé. And unfortunately, we're coming to an end of our time. I'm realizing I should have made this 90 minutes instead of 60, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time and expectations here. But before we go, I want to give everyone a chance to just recap some upcoming dates, whether you have any submission deadlines coming up or festival dates you would like to mention, just because I know some folks are joining who weren't here at the very beginning. So just to recap, Deidre from BronzeLens, do you want to talk about any upcoming dates people should be aware of?
Yes, our submissions are done. We are going to make the announcement. For the past few years, we've been doing it online, so anybody in the world can see it online. And so that will be on July 5th, that the selections will be announced. The actual festival is August 17th through 22nd, and it will be totally virtual this upcoming year. And today is the day that the tickets go on sale for festival passes. So this is an auspicious day for us.
And just a reminder for those who have formally registered for this panel, and it's not too late to do that, you can kind of register right now. I believe the link is at the very top of the YouTube chat, but you will be receiving an email with different kinds of discount codes, and Deidre has graciously offered a discount on passes to any of the registrants.
All access for 20% off. So
there you go. Lauren.
Yeah, so we're turning 52 this year, September 30th through October 6th. We are going to be a hybrid festival with a majority of our films online, our panels online through Eventive, and then we are going to make some exciting announcements about our in-person screenings that we are going to have, and it's so amazing to say that for in-person screenings. So yeah, stay tuned. We're going to be making some pass announcements this month and then more to come. But our entries are still open. Our extended deadline for film is June 25th. And then our screenplay extended deadline is, I believe, June. I'm so bad. I'm like forgetting it right now. But it's June 14th, I think. So those are coming up, and I provided a discount to everyone for entries. So it'll be in that email.
Yeah. Casey, how about Austin's upcoming deadlines and dates?
Yeah, so our final deadline for the film competitions is going to be July 9th. I failed to mention this earlier, but we actually have closed most of our script competition categories, but we do have our fiction, podcast, and playwriting competition categories open. So if anyone is interested with the screenplay, in that sense, certainly feel free to check that out. We send out our notifications usually that third week in September in preparation for announcement of the full slate, obviously, and everything else for the festival. So certainly everyone keep an eye out for that. And programming announcements will be on the horizon here pretty soon. We just recently announced Scott Frank will be joining us as an awardee this year, so we're really excited about that. And we'll have certainly more announcements to accompany that. But yeah.
Great. Alyssa, how about Atlanta's deadlines?
We are right at the beginning of the submission process for 2022. We opened up, oh gosh, I guess a month ago now, right at the end of our last festival. Our first deadline is on June 10th, and our final deadline is November 18th. So it's a pretty extensive window to submit your projects. You'll be getting a discount from us as well. And our festival for 2022 will be April 21st to May 1st, 2022. Making sure I got my 2s and 1s correct, but yes. So we are gearing up to plan the next one and look forward to seeing your work.
And Zandashé.
Yeah, the 32nd New Orleans Film Festival is November 5th through the 21st, and we're coming up on our last extended deadline, June 18th. So please do get in there and submit. Again, this will be a hybrid festival where we're welcoming back some more of our in-person gathering and screenings, but we'll have things available online as well. And we're really excited to also dish out the Filmmaker Conference. So participating filmmakers will have access to some really great roundtables, but we'll also be sharing a series of panels just around process and theme and just different conversations around filmmaking. So yeah, really looking forward to hopefully festing in place with many of you soon, safely.
I would like to say that we're going to have about 15 panels. That's what we're anticipating. So it's going to be very rich with a lot of different programming aspects.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for taking part in this and answering all these questions. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. And I apologize that we weren't able to get to all the questions, but please, if you have a question about the programming process, ask programmers, reach out, find the email. I think every festival should have some kind of avenue to, reach out and ask a programmer a specific question. So make sure you get your questions answered, even before you submit. Make sure that, if you want to know who's watching your film, or if you want to know the average runtime of a film that they've shown in the past, or if you want to know the percentage of films. There was a question about percentage of films that were programmed from the city the festival's in. Ask those questions and find out before, making any decisions about where you send your film off to be considered, because we, speaking for everyone here, we're in service of you and your art. That's why we exist. And we want to make sure that we're helping you to make the best decision for the audience and the path that your film finds. So please reach out. And again, if you haven't registered already, I don't think it's too late. Just sign up on that form at the top of the YouTube chat, and we will be sending out those discount codes. And hopefully that'll also open up other channels for you to continue the conversation. So thanks everybody again for joining us. Have a lovely evening, and go enjoy some films. Bye.
Bye-bye.